You're listening to the Stay Sore Podcast.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Stay Sore Podcast. I'm your host, Bo Skitsko, and today I have the pleasure to introduce to you one of my clients, Neal. And I think it's a very important and inspirational and sometimes motivational story that Neal has, because it's not always about being Mr. Olympia. It's not always about having like chiseled abs or like winning a strongman competition. Sometimes you're just a normal person and has a full-time job, family, kids, and you need to take control over your health. And that quite often can happen through lifestyle changes. And that's why I think it's very important to share your story, Neal. Thank you so much for being on the show. So your story, I think, is important to the average person because, yes, you can take control over your own health. About 2 years ago, you came to me looking for a fitness program or something. What was the reason you were looking for a program?
Well, so really the main reason was because I, for a long time, kind of struggled with getting a good, consistent exercise routine, struggled with diet, made a lot of excuses. And, along the way, just kind of figured I'll get to it eventually. But really the catalyst was a pretty eye-opening doctor's appointment, my annual physical.
Okay.
A lot of my numbers were not going in the right direction for a long time, but now this was getting to a point of, my doctor had actually advised of upping my cholesterol medication.
Okay.
So I'd been taking cholesterol medication for a long time, just more as a precautionary measure because of my family history, and my doctor was very cautious. But at the moment that he said, okay, now this isn't precautionary, this is actually, preventative, in a sense, that really opened my eyes up. And he had, we had a pretty, I think, meaningful conversation about what the future would look like if I kept going down that path.
What did it look like? What was the wording, if you can roughly remember, that scared you most?
Yeah, I think it was more, I think that, for a long time, so in my family, we have a history of heart attacks. And, right or wrong, I think that I had always thought, okay, well, I'll have a heart attack and I'll die, but I'll enjoy my life until then. And yeah, it'll be sad, but,
And when you say enjoy, you mean I just do the things I love doing, eating out and going out and whatever.
Eating, drinking, just being lazy, sitting around doing nothing. But, not that I hadn't thought about these things, but, the doctor had kind of said, well, you may not just have a heart attack and die. You may have a stroke. You may have a heart attack and not die. And now somebody is going to be indebted, or not indebted, but, obligated to take care of you for the rest of your life. So, I gave that a lot of thought, and I was like, I kind of wrote this story for myself that was, again, justifying my behavior. And now I'm thinking about different outcomes and what that would do to my family, what that would, do to other people, and realizing that, you can't just lay this thing out that works for you just so you can do whatever you want. So, I asked him at that time, can we avoid the medication change if I can change my behavior? So he said, I'll give you 6 months, but when you come back, so instead of doing an annual physical, we'll do a 6-month follow-up. He was like, at that point, we're going to have to make a decision. So if you can do it, then we'll keep you on the old medication. If you can't, then we're going to have to bump it up.
So you asked the doctor for kind of an ultimatum. If I can make it work, can we skip the medications? And just background, it's not that you're lazy. You have a super important and very busy job managing a lot of people, but it's a sedentary job from the computer for the most part. So that's the part that you mean by physically active. Because mentally you're pretty busy. I know, I talk to you about your job quite often. So I see what made you change your story writing internally was the responsibility in front of your family and kids. Yeah,
for the most part, and to myself, to lead a better life and have a healthier lifestyle. And I think that I've had a lot of fun for, the 40 years building up to that, and it was time to make some changes.
Okay. Well, did you have any fears or apprehensions, anything before you came in looking for change?
Yeah, I think that always there's the fear of just falling back into the old habits, just giving up. I could have, I think one apprehension was, well, I could just take the new medication and just keep going. And maybe the story will result the way that I thought it would.
And unfortunately, most people, I'm really sad to say that, but most people go that route.
Right.
I'll just take the medication, just do the same thing.
Yeah, so that was one thing, right, is like not sticking with it. But that's where I think that I really decided to make myself more accountable to others. So like starting with the doctor, right? So that was the first thing, like, okay, I'm accountable to this person in 6 months from now. And I mean, he's been my physician for like close to 20 years. So, there's that sense of responsibility to him,
definitely.
right? And then, working with you a little bit in the beginning and kind of thinking about being accountable to friends and family, talking more about this lifestyle change, kind of putting it out there in front of people so that if I go back on it, right, there's like a level
people can call you out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level, I think, of like using that shame to your advantage, right? I used to tell people at work, I talk about this a lot with you guys because if you see me eating donuts tomorrow, then you know that I'm not, telling the truth.
See, the interesting thing is, and what I want people to get out of this is that the way you talk about it right now is not the same Neal I met 2 years ago. Because 2 years ago when you came in, you said, well, this weekend I'm going out with buddies from work. How am I supposed to not eat this? Or how am I supposed to not drink it? And my wording to you was, tell them what you're doing, tell them so they can call you out on it. And you were kind of nervous about it. Now you're so like, you're confident in these things, but before it wasn't. And it was a long process of changing you, not just physical exercises, but all these conversations. Right. And I'm really happy to see that now you can say it so confidently, but it didn't start there.
No, for sure. I mean, it's a mindset change. You have to put it in the front of your mind instead of in the back of your mind. Right?
Yes, so, most definitely. So your initial goals were, correct me if I'm wrong, but changing a little bit, working out a little more and eating a tiny bit less, but you still had it in your mind that I'm still going to figure out ways how I can eat bad things or drink bad things, right? How did your goals change over time?
Yeah, I think that there's been kind of like some peaks and valleys. I think in the beginning, because of that sort of 6-month ultimatum, at that time, I really was going pretty hardcore that, okay, I'm going to really limit the calories because I have this appointment coming up. But then, after kind of hitting that first milestone, then I started, I think, to fall back into some, not excuse making, but just kind of negotiating within myself, like how can I? But it just doesn't. I don't think it works that way. You can't just go up and down. Especially,
unfortunately, it works for most people, but that's the wrong way of doing it.
Yeah, and I think that again, like the accountability, coming to the studio, right, paying for a service, that helps a lot because you generally don't pay for something and then do the opposite of whatever you paid for the next day, right? So that definitely helps.
Money is a big motivator.
Yeah, it is. But there were you have your moments of, well, I can kind of cheat here and cheat there, but I would say that the initial goals though really were get back to a better place, at least in time for that checkup. Yeah, and then that was the next kind of struggle, I would say. Is like, okay, I was able to actually achieve something. Now there's a fork in the road. Do I stick with it and go better, or do I fall back and then go, and then go hardcore again? But I think something clicked where you just can't yo-yo every 3 or 6 months like that. I mean, it just wouldn't work. It's hard. I mean,
I understand. And in the beginning, we had these conversations where you even admitted and told me, like, we worked out twice a day, and once in the blue moon on a Sunday or something, you're like, I don't know, I'm going to eat bad. Maybe if I pay you for this extra session, I'm actually going to work out because that's going to motivate me.
Yep.
And nowadays, you do it yourself. I actually, my goal, like, guys, if you're listening or watching this, my goal, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but it's not to get people in here and get paid, which is nice. I mean, I still have to pay my bills. But my goal is to teach you how to do it. So now you're working out less with me and more by yourself. but we had to get to the point where you were mentally strong enough to actually do it instead of find excuses not to, right?
Right, yeah, no, we went from 2 to 3 times a week, with a lot of those Sundays, and, where I'd call you and say, hey, I'm feeling like I'm not going to be able to make it through the rest of the day.
I'll negotiate my way out of the workout.
Yeah, back down to then twice a week and now once a week, and I've been able to keep it up on my own.
You were almost about to sell your home gym, a bench of barbells, dumbbells, and over last year during the lockdown where everyone had to stay at home, you actually approached me and said, hey, I need to do this, I need to stay accountable. You worked out online, and I taught you how to use that home equipment to do it yourself, and now you see me only once a week and you keep going and do it yourself, and I'm super proud of you. Yeah,
thanks. Yeah, it was a good decision not to sell it. And that's another thing I wanted to mention is I think I'd only been coming here for about 2 to 3 months before the lockdown, and I think that's another thing for me that kind of clicked, because at that time, March of 2020, I could have easily just quit, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, I can't come here, so there's no options. I'm going to sell all my equipment. Maybe if I would have sold it, maybe, I don't know, who knows, maybe I would have quit. But, again, I think that things worked out in such a way, and I finally was taking it seriously, that even doing it from home, I kept up with it. And the majority of our workouts actually were online through that, appointment where I was able to lower my cholesterol and get a lot of the numbers in the right direction. So
really quick, why we do this whole podcast? What was your biggest win out of this whole lifestyle change?
Well, I mean, there's been a few. I think so. One thing I would say, again, as I mentioned, being accountable to family. So I actually do a Zoom workout with a cousin of mine who was kind of on a similar
And I trained
journey.
both of you for a minute.
Yep.
He's from a different state, but on Zoom during the lockdown, I trained both of you.
Yeah, so we worked out with you, and then he started, coming up with some of his own workouts. So that's been a big win, because he and I now are accountable to each other. So, there's never a Sunday that either one of us is texting the other saying, I don't feel like it. Like, we're right there every morning, awesome. Every Sunday. So that's been a big one. I'm really happy about that, because, we've been able to kind of help each other. The numbers that kind of motivated for me in the beginning, they really have.
And numbers, you mean blood work?
Yeah, blood work. So the lab results, so my cholesterol, like hemoglobin, my LDL, HDL, like all of those they were all either over the acceptable threshold by a little bit 2 years ago, or really trending.
Just borderline.
Yeah, borderline to go over. Now they're at like mid-range or even like below the range after 2 years. And even in that first 6 months, everything shot down. So that was another thing I would say is like a big win, just to see in a 6-month period of time the difference that can be made through exercising and through changing habits and eating right. And now those have stayed consistent. And if you look at my numbers now, you'd say, oh, that's a healthy person versus what you would have seen 2 years ago.
And that, for me personally, as your trainer or coach, that's the biggest, happiest point of all of this. That's the biggest win, because the mirror is nice. Buying new clothes, which you had to buy a bunch of new clothes because you got smaller and tighter, but your shoulders got broader and stuff. So everything changed well. But the health and more so the quality of life. And then you just being a good example for your family and kids, right? That to me is the biggest win, because a healthy body can look good anyway. So health comes first and the looks follow. So that's the biggest win, and I'm so proud of the numbers. And then you were so concerned about the numbers, but now you actually even see physical appearance in the mirrors.
That's a nice, I guess, byproduct of it. I'm still focused on the health. It's really less about the cosmetic aspect of it, or however you say it. But it is good to be able to see the results.
It's a nice motivator
as well. Yeah, it does. Like, it makes you feel like, okay, I don't want to get back to where I was, right? I want to keep this up, just from the perspective of when you see something look better, you want to keep it that way. But I mean, back to the health piece, like now I actually, every 6 months, I'm looking forward to that appointment. Like, I'm actually excited to drive there and have them take my blood to do the blood work. I mean,
awesome.
Those kind of things that, in the past I was like, oh my God, I don't want to have to do this, and then I get the results.
I get it. So we talked about your win, but what are some struggles and frustrations throughout the whole process of changing your lifestyle? It didn't happen overnight. We had so many different in-depth conversations.
I mean, I still think it's always still a struggle, right? To think about every decision on a daily basis, right? You have to, now it's like I said, in the front of my mind. So I don't want to say a struggle or a negotiation, but sometimes it's not as fun to go back to revert to those bad habits because now there's a feeling of guilt.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, but I think it's good guilt in a way because you do it less, right? Do those things less. But that's probably probably the one thing that I would say is like an annoyance of it is that I'm very, I think now, again, like guilt driven, right? So like if I do something 5 hours from now that isn't healthy, it's kind of consuming me.
I've noticed that from our conversations.
Yeah.
When you're going to have a family event or go somewhere and eat something or be unprepared. But let's talk about excuses or how to fight them. When you know these things happen, what do you do? And I kind of know the answer, but I want you to answer to the viewers.
Well, I mean, for me, I think that it also wouldn't be healthy for me to just be 100%, never do anything,
Totally agree.
That I get some pleasure out of, whether it's, eating a higher calorie meal or having some drinks or things like that. So, but it's just picking and choosing the spots, right? That if it's something with friends and family, I will, I'll do a little better, even in that space, whether it's ordering something different, just eating a little bit less. But I'm not going to close myself off to it completely. But I think then you just have to kind of compensate for it by leading a healthy lifestyle until the next time you have to kind of break from it. But those just can't be very often.
Okay, so let's word it slightly different and make it more clear how people can fight these little things, or maybe once in a blue moon enjoy life. And what you do, what I've noticed from our conversations always is if something happens, you're going to eat or go out or have a wedding or whatever it is, first of all, you try to call me and, hey, I need a hard workout before.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So you prepare for it. Yeah. Then you try to eat a little less throughout the day. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure.
And what I'm most proud of right now, lately, the last few months, I've noticed you actually found a hotel gym. You found something to do. You even told me at one time you were at a hotel, there was no gym, but you surprised yourself. You actually got up and did some push-ups and squats and stuff like that. So it's a mindset change and then slowly pushing those little improvements to get ready for that one little indulgence. Yep. And if you do all these steps before, it's not going to be as guilt-driven. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good point. Definitely one thing I've learned from working out with you and just kind of opening my eyes up is that you don't need a huge gym to get a good workout. Yeah. That was...
Are you calling my gym small? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, you need a 5x3 kind of space.
Your basement is a good example where you worked out throughout the whole lockdown through Zoom with me. It's a small space. You can touch the ceiling.
Yeah.
We actually had problems with overhead presses.
Right, yeah. So those are some of the things, again, I don't think, it's not that I didn't realize that these things could be done, right? I mean, I knew what a squat was before I met you, but it's just, my mind was like, well, I'm never going to do one of those. Like, why would I do that? Now, if I'm, stuck in a hotel room or, somewhere, I can just do that right in place. And you're right, it helps to kind of prepare for the rest of the day or the weekend or whatever you're involved in. So that's a good point. I've definitely adopted that mindset.
And the key word, what you said, was very important. It just can't be that often. You go eat out once in a while, but it can't be that often. It can't be every weekend I'm going out and getting,
Yeah.
So what is the biggest takeaway, and what would you recommend to people that just want to live a healthier, better life? Because you were, I'm just going to say it, I hope you don't mind, but you were very unhealthy with extremely bad habits.
Yeah.
As far as nutrition, as far as never moving, and just being stuck in a very dark mindset. Yep. And you changed so much. What is your biggest takeaway and advice to people?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I definitely think accountability is a big thing. I also would advise anyone that if you don't go to a doctor on a regular basis to, make an appointment, Have a physical. At least have the facts in front of you of what the data shows, right? What the numbers look like. For me, you know, again, and not making this an advertisement for you, but I knew that I wasn't going to be able to just do that on my own. You know, I've just never, because I've failed at that before, right?
Many people, I'm the same way. Sometimes I feel so down and so tired from work and wrong mindset. I have to call up a athlete or another trainer to just do it together. I know.
I mean, that appointment that I referred to, it's not like it just went overnight from the previous one was great and then it was bad. Like they were trending over years to that point. So I had tried before that, okay, I'm going to definitely work out in that basement, you know, and obviously all that stuff was sitting there collecting dust. So, you know, I think that if you know that you can't do it yourself, try to find some outlet, again, being accountable to somebody, the motivation of spending on it if you can, right? Make a concession somewhere else to try to make it work.
I love that.
I would definitely, I mean, for me, it's like you mentioned, like going out to dinner 3 or 4 times a month, it's that money. Literally would pay for, you know, a month of sessions here. So for me, that's what I would advise. Like, make yourself accountable by being loud about it. Make that doctor's appointment and get the numbers, and then try to find a different way, because I know people in my position, it's very hard to be a self-starter and just turn it around overnight. And, you know, there's a lot of things that I didn't really know, you know, how to work out properly. So there are advantages. I mean, you're not just counting here when I'm here. You're actually showing me things that I wouldn't be doing on my own. So. And
entertaining you, telling you lame jokes and stuff. Definitely. And it's, you know, just to be fair, it doesn't have to be an expensive trainer. Sometimes it can be watch YouTube videos or whatever.
Right.
Go with a friend who has been working out for a while, something. But you definitely have to have somebody to guide you. And then, like you said, set loud goals so people can call you out if you don't stick to them.
I think that partnership, again, whether it's with a trainer, whether it's with a family member or a friend, I think having that is huge. And I wanted to do that, but I was avoiding that because I didn't want to be accountable to anybody.
Exactly, because then you'd have actually to do it and to struggle through it.
So you know, again, it's got to click, and I think, you know, those are some of the things that I would definitely recommend.
All right, Neal, thank you so much for talking to me about
Appreciate
this.
It.
I hope you guys, listeners on podcast platforms or viewers on YouTube, got something inspirational, motivational out of it. Sometimes it's just the small little things that lead to a big result. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more. Subscribe to the channel. Neal, thank you so much.
All right.
Until next time, stay sore.